Hello, friends. It's Pastor John here. It's time for this week's episode of PD on Pop Culture. And I'm going to do something I haven't done, at least so far. I'm going to circle back on something because about 6 weeks ago, I talked about The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is a series, a limited time series on Disney Plus. It was a 6-week series, and I, of course, talked about it after the first episode. Well, the last episode just aired this past Friday, and I wanted to kind of look at the whole thing and kind of revisit what I thought was fun and interesting about that show. So, if you hadn't seen it, the basic premise is this is Falcon, played by Anthony Mackie, Bucky Barnes, Winter Soldier, played by Sebastian Stan, and how sort of the aftermath of after Endgame and Captain America. If you haven't seen the end of Endgame, spoiler alert, Captain America is old and gives the shield to Sam, sort of passing the mantle. Now, in the comic book storyline, that happens as well. Sam becomes Captain America in the comic book story, as does Bucky, as does there's many different Captain Americas in the comic book storylines, not just Steve Rogers. But this was that sort of first transition in the MCU. Now, in the very beginning of the show, Sam doesn't keep the shield; he gives it back to the government, and then we find out later on, secret tip, the government doesn't own it. But anyway, and the government, feeling a need for another Captain America, appoints this war hero, John Walker, and to be the new Captain America. And he's not quite as straight-laced as Sam is, as Bucky is. But anyway, it's sort of the whole storyline is about Sam and Bucky kind of chasing this this group of sort of anti-open borders types called the Flag Smashers, and trying to track them down and what's going on with that. And eventually, let's see. I don't want to give too much of it away because I really enjoyed this. I didn't, I kind of expected, in the direction that Disney's been going recently, that I might not like this, but I think they handled this one really well. It walks the line. If you're familiar with today's politics, it really walks that line between the sort of the ultra woke and the non woke, if you will. And it finds that common ground where we can, hopefully we can kind of hear each other and talk to each other and listen to each other, which I think is really, really important because we don't get there, right? But there's one part of this. Now, eventually, Sam does, I'm going to spoil a little bit, Sam does come to that point where he takes the mantle and becomes Captain America. And there's a sort of that undercurrent of, well, can a black man, because Sam Wilson is black, can a black man be Captain America? Can he carry the American flag? And for Sam, it's like, no, I'm an American first. I'm the color doesn't matter. Steve Rogers wasn't a white man. It wasn't a white man's flag. It was Steve Rogers' shield. It was Steve Rogers' flag. So it got me to thinking a little bit about power and the exercise of power and authority. I was reminded of this passage from John. This is the Gospel of John, chapter 19, beginning with verse 8. And this is Jesus in front of Pilate. When Pilate heard this, he was even more afraid, and he went back inside the palace. "Where do you come from?" he asked Jesus, but Jesus gave him no answer. "Do you refuse to speak to me?" Pilate said. "Don't you realize I have power either to free you or to crucify you?" Jesus answered, "You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin. You know, the exercise of human power is really the exercise of authority given by God, isn't it? And so, isn't it incumbent upon us to do what's right, to do what's appropriate? Some people got a little upset with the show when they felt like it was going woke, but then it didn't really go that way. And in the end, there's this passage where it's sort of in the denouement of the show, and Falcon goes on this long sort of discussion with these politicians about what they're doing about the borders and the people, and they don't understand the people. He says you keep making these decisions, but none of the people who are affected by your decisions are in the room when you make those decisions. And boy, that's a really salient point today, isn't it? That the people that are most affected by our decisions really ought to have a say in it, right? Anyways, it was, I was really pleased with it. I was surprised that, Disney seems to be kind of going hard left and very woke recently, and this came back to the center. And I think it has appeal regardless of your political viewpoint. I think this show has appeal. And I think it also speaks to our use of power and where that power comes from. Whose authority are we working under? As Christians, we recognize that God has ultimate authority, but does the world? Maybe that's something for us to ask, huh? Anyway, give the series a shot. The whole thing is now, all 6 episodes are streaming on Disney Plus if you happen to have it. It's well worth a watch. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. So anyway, that's what I have for you this week. Hope you're all doing well. Take care and God bless. Bye now.